Today I am bringing you my mid-year series wrap-up or check-in. I don't know what I'm going to call this video, but we're going to be talking about the series that I've started this year, the series that I finished this year, the series that I have ongoing, and also one DNF. I feel like it makes sense to structure this video in sections. So we are going to start with the series that I finished so far this year, of which there are 5. Let me know in the comments how many series you finished so far this year, because I feel like 5 is a decent number. If I do the same again in the second half of the year, then that'll be 10 overall for the year. And I like round numbers, but like I said, we are going to start with the series that I finished. The first series that I finished this year was the Malazan Book of the Fallen series by Steven Erikson. I'm holding up the first book, Gardens of the Moon, because there are 10 books in this series and I'm not holding up them all. There are also other books that are set within this world. There's actually 2 authors that write within the Malazan world, Steven Erikson and Ian Esselmon. I have only read the 10 books in the Book of the Fallen series, so that's what I'm going to be talking about today. First book, like I said, is Gardens of the Moon. It's actually really difficult to give a synopsis for the series because how do you summarise a 10-book series? But this I would recommend if you're looking for a series that is told in a really unique way. The characters will often have conversations where you don't have any context. They know what they're talking about, but they don't explain stuff for you as the reader, and so you have to kind of piece things together, little bits of knowledge from across the series, and in some ways that felt really satisfying, in other ways it felt really frustrating, but it's definitely one of the most uniquely told series that I've ever read. You have to be willing to think deeply and to have a lot of patience and to be willing to just go with the flow and accept that you might feel a little bit lost at times. I definitely felt quite lost while reading this first book in particular because it really drops you into the world. One of the main themes of this series is compassion, and I think it's really important to have that in the back of your mind as you're reading. I didn't always connect with Erikson's way of writing characters. There were just so many characters. There's literally hundreds, if not thousands, across the series, and I felt like sometimes you were expected to care deeply about a character when we'd barely spent any time with them. They'd barely had any page time. So for me, this is a series that I enjoyed. I would probably give the series as a whole 4 stars, but it's not a new favourite, unfortunately. I did buddy read this with my partner because it's his favourite series of all time, and I think if this works for you, then it will be the best thing you've ever read. I do have a standalone review for Gardens of the Moon, which is spoiler-free, and I also have a series review, which again is spoiler-free, so I will leave those linked just in case you're interested in hearing more thoughts on this. Next up we have the Wayfarers series by Becky Chambers. The first book is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. I read this and the first 3 books last year, but I finished the 4th book this year. This is my favourite cozy sci-fi series. It's set way in the future where humans have left the Earth, gone out into the galaxy and become a part of the galactic community. And I would say the main theme across this series is the importance of communication and understanding other cultures. You have human characters, but you also have different alien races and different planets to explore, different customs and ways of life to learn about, and I just found it all really fascinating. Each book is its own standalone story, and I think I'd heard that at some point, but I wasn't prepared for how individual each book was going to feel. You're introduced to a group of characters in this book, and then in the second book you have a couple of characters that cross over, but it is its own story, and the same with the 3rd book and then the 4th book. Usually there's like a couple of characters that you might recognise, so I would recommend starting with this first book. I think it's a great introduction to this universe, but then the rest of the series, I think you could read the books in any order. It's really difficult for me to choose a favourite book in this series because I gave them all 5 stars, but if I had to choose one, it would be either book 2 or book 3. I think I liked the theme work in those 2 books the best. Book 2 focuses on body autonomy and how you have this character that feels very uncomfortable in their own skin. Book 3, on the other hand, is focusing on a group of people who are trying to hold on to a certain way of life. Throughout the series there's also a lot of LGBT rep. I wouldn't say that this is very romance focused, but it is very slice of life, and romantic relationships as well as friendships and familial relationships are part of life, so it does delve into all types of different relationships. And yeah, I think if you're looking to get into sci-fi, then this would be a perfect place to start. Next up we have The Talons duology by Jen Williams. The first first book is called Talon Sister and the sequel is called Titan Child. I read both of these this year and gave them both 4 stars. I think this is a really solid duology. I would recommend it if you like old English folklore vibes. A lot of these books take place in a forest. One of the characters that we follow is called Leven, which is short for 11, and she is a soldier. She was part of this army, but she's now retired. She has no memory of her life before she became a soldier. I think she's in her late 20s, and she basically underwent this process to be turned into a killing machine. This army of soldiers are all similar to Leven. I think they're called heralds. Now that she's retired, she is starting to have these visions that seem to be from her past, and she decides to investigate. There are multiple POVs that you follow in this. I would recommend this if you like the animal companion trope too, because one of the other main characters that you follow was raised by griffins. Griffins are one of the last existing races of titans that exist within this world. There used to also be, I want to say, wyverns and unicorns and krakens, maybe. There's definitely multiple different mythological beasts that used to be part of this world. Griffins are now one of the last that remain, and yeah, I just think this series was so creative. I loved the world building. It does take its time to slowly build, but that was something that I really enjoyed. There's a few different types of relationship that are represented in this as well. We have a third perspective, which is a guy who is part of the Empire, and he's traveling to an isolated part of the world to accompany a mage. This is really difficult to explain, but he's traveling to a certain isolated part of the world for reasons that are revealed, and he has a younger assistant who is essentially his adoptive daughter, and I liked how this focused on friendships as well as familial relationships, and there's a little bit of romance, but it's not what I would call romantasy at all. I love worlds that feel old and lived in and that have a lot of mystery, and I think that Jen Williams does that really well. I also love a good map, and the map of this world looks a lot like the map of the United Kingdom. Next up we have the Cat and Lock series by Jo Callahan, which is a crime thriller series that does have a slight speculative element, because in this we're following a main character called Cat, who is a police detective, and she is paired up with an AI detective called Ada Locke as part of this pilot program where the government want to see how AI can help the police. Cat has very valid reasons for being against this. She does not trust AI. She believes that AI can't replace human intuition and experience, which she has a lot of. On the other side, Locke's creator also has very valid reasons for thinking that AI can benefit the police. She thinks that humans have, well, they do have existing biases like sexism and racism, and AI can potentially help to counteract that. It's set in the UK, in the Midlands, in Warwickshire, which isn't that far from where I live. The audiobook narrator does the different Midlands accents for the characters. There's other accents as well, like there's a character who's Welsh and a character who's Scottish, but I just loved the way that the audiobook narrator brought these characters to life, and it felt comforting in a way because there aren't many series or books that are set near where I live, and I actually met Jo Callahan at an event recently that was in my city. I would recommend reading this series in order because I do think they build on each other. Even though each book is an individual case that the team is working on, there's a lot to do with the relationships within the team, the relationship between Cat and Locke, and all of the different life experiences that they go through. I think that all builds to the last book, and I don't think that you would appreciate certain elements of the last book if you don't have that grounding. The final series in this section is the Influencer series by Amy Lee. This is a romance series, and like with many romance series, each book in this series is intended to be its own standalone self-contained story, but there's crossovers with characters. So the first book follows a main character who is a fitness influencer. The second book follows a main character who is the sister of the main character from the first book, and she is a book influencer. Then this third book follows a fashion influencer who is friends with the main characters from the first 2 books. I will say that the second book was probably my favourite in the series, but I did enjoy this third book. I gave it 4 stars. I liked the setting and how it took place mostly in this small fishing town in Canada. I liked the the main character was stuck in a rut with her content. She goes on this journey realizing that her content has become a bit stagnated because she's putting on this persona for the online world and she's not being her true authentic self. And I really liked her personal journey as well as the relationship that she has with the main love interest, the only love interest. I don't know why I said the main love interest, but I thought that their relationship was really fun. She is more sunshine and he is more grumpy. It talks a lot about loneliness because the main character has a lot of acquaintances and people that she knows, but she doesn't have many close friends outside of the two main characters from the first two books. So it was really lovely seeing her be welcomed into this big family. She ends up fake dating the guy who is running the bed and breakfast where she's staying. I'm not going to go into all the details because I didn't actually know them before going into this story. I have seen this kind of compared to It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. I actually preferred this book. I thought the characters were a bit more likeable and it wasn't as smutty. There's a little bit of steam in the second half and I would say that there's probably one or two more sex scenes than I would personally prefer. That's just my personal taste, but I found this a really fun time and I would recommend this. I would also read other books by this author. In this next section we have series that I've made progress with this year, and first up is the Ernest Cunningham series by Benjamin Stevenson. This is a mystery series that is very self-aware. It has a very distinct writing style that you're either going to love or hate. I like it. I think it works really well on audio because it regularly breaks the fourth wall and it's written as if the main character Ernest is writing books about experiences that he's had, and he keeps getting caught up in these murder mystery situations and he regularly talks about the rules of a good murder mystery, and I thought this third book was fun. I would probably order the books with the first book at the top. That's probably my favourite so far, then this one, and then the second book. They're set in Australia, the narrator has an Australian accent, and I just think this series is a really fun time, but it's not going to work for everyone. If you can try a sample, then I would recommend doing so because I think you'll know very quickly whether it's a type of humour that's going to work for you. Next up we have The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi by Shannon Chakraborty. This year I reread the first book in preparation for The Tapestry of Fate, which so far I would say is my favourite sequel that I've read so far this year. I love the characters in this series. I love Amina. I love reading books and especially fantasy books that follow older women. Amina, I would guess, is in her 40s. She used to be a formidable pirate when she was younger. However, she retired, and at the start of the first book she is convinced to come out of retirement for one last quest, and I loved the setup for book one, and the second book actually slows the pace down a little bit. It's less action driven and it's more about the mystery surrounding the magic, and you have these complicated relationships. There's a complicated romance in this series that I'm very invested in, but also you get more of a development of a particular friendship, which I just really enjoyed reading about. The ending of The Tapestry of Fate as well has me so excited and interested in the direction that the next book is going to go in and what it's going to be exploring in particular. I've also this year made progress with the Tomes and Tea series by Rebecca Thorne. I've read the first 3 books in this series now. I only have one more left and I'm hoping to get to it before the end of the year, but this is a cozy fantasy series. It's sapphic. It follows a couple who decide to leave their responsibilities behind, move to a small town and set up a tea shop that is also a bookshop. It's a really fun time in my opinion, although saying that, the humour doesn't always quite work for me. I think sometimes it tries too hard to be funny and it edges into cheesy and corny, but yeah, if you're looking for something light-hearted and you're looking for something that follows an established couple, I really like how the two main characters in this met before the start of book one, and so the situations that they have to navigate being a couple that have been together for a while, I think that's a perspective that you don't often see, and they have a lot of respect for one another and they're they always take their time to understand the other person's perspective, and I just think that's really refreshing. Next up we have the one series that I've DNF'd this year, and that is the Emily Wilde series by Heather Fawcett. I read Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies and I enjoyed it-ish. I gave it 3 stars. I liked that it was written like a diary and it was set in Scandinavia where it's very cold and snowy. I read this, I think, at a good time of the year. I thought the atmosphere was really good and I liked learning about the different types of fae. From what I gather, most people who love this series enjoy it because of the romantic relationship, and I just don't feel that invested in this couple. I thought they were okay, their dynamic was kind of fun, but I wasn't swooning. I've also started to realise that when it comes to fantasy, I either want cozy fantasy that has no stakes apart from personal stakes, but 0 stakes, or I want high fantasy that is epic and that has really intense stakes. I don't tend to like books that fall in the middle, and I do feel like this book, it has a cozy vibe, and what I find with cozy feeling books is that when there are stakes, they often feel forced to me, and I don't find it believable. I get a bit bored because I'm just waiting to move past the drama to get back into the story because I don't believe that the characters are actually in danger, and I got that feeling a little bit with Emily Wilde. So yeah, I don't think I'm going to continue this series, but it was okay and I would still recommend it. The final section is series that I started this year that I do plan on continuing, and first up we have the Patternist series by Octavia Butler. I am on a mission to complete Octavia Butler's backlist because I love her writing. I think she is incredible. There's conflicting opinions on what order you can read this series. I started with Wild Seed because I think it's the first that comes chronologically and you can read it as a standalone. I found it a really good introduction to this world, which is kind of historical. I'm not going to go too much in depth into any of these series in this final section because you're going to hear me talk about them again at some point, but yeah, I thought this was a fascinating character study of these 2 people who have lived for a very long time, and it's about their relationship and the conflicts that they have, and it was just so interesting. Next up we have The Lamplight Murder Mysteries by Morgan Stang. This is a self-published murder mystery fantasy series, and I enjoyed the first book. I didn't predict the direction that it went in, which is always good when you're reading a murder mystery. I like that it's a murder mystery series that is set within a slightly fantastical world. It feels kind of Victorian. The second book, from what I gather, is set on a train, and it seems like it was inspired by Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express, so very intrigued to pick that up. I think there's 3 books out in the series so far. Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky is one of my favourite sci-fi books that I've read so far this year, and even though you could comfortably read this as a standalone, I feel like it wraps up in a satisfying enough way. I still want to know what is going to happen after that ending. The way that it ends, I think, is going to open up the world, the universe, so much more, and I'm fascinated to see that. I love that this book was about sentient, intelligent spiders and seeing the evolution of that. It was just so good. In fact, Peter F. Hamilton on the front has called this a really smart science fiction, and I agree. My camera battery just ran out when I only have 1 more book left to talk about, 1 more series left to talk about, I should say, and that is the Murderbot series by Martha Wells. I have actually now read the first 2 books in this series. I read All Systems Red a few months ago, and I literally finished the second book last night, so you will be seeing my thoughts on that in a vlog coming soon. But I love Murderbot. I've just filmed the mid-year book tag where I didn't feel like I had an answer to my favourite character of the year so far, and it's Murderbot. I love Murderbot. Murderbot is just an anxious being who wants to be left alone to watch their soap operas, but instead they keep getting pulled into these situations where they have to protect humans from themselves, and it's fun, but it also has this dry, snarky, sarcastic humour that just really works for me. I was actually recommended this series because I like the Wayfarers series, and I do think that's a good recommendation. I think they have a similar sort of vibe, but also tonally they're a little bit different. I would actually say that this has some mystery thriller elements, especially in the first book. In fact, yeah, in both books there's some type of mystery that Murderbot is trying to uncover, and I love that kind of blend. We'll definitely be continuing this series, especially because they're all so short. That does bring us to the end of the video, so thank you for watching. If you made it this far, let me know in the comments how many series you have started this year. year or how many series you finished this year. I'm always curious to hear whether people are more series readers or standalone readers. I feel like I do a mix of both, but when I was looking at my reading spreadsheet earlier, apparently less than half of the books that I've read this year have been part of series, so I need to step it up in the second half of the year. But yeah, let me know if you've read any of these series and what you thought of them. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Click subscribe if you would like to see more videos from me, but otherwise I will see you next time. Bye!